Welcome in, everyone, to episode 126 of the Batfoot Podcast. My name is Damian, here with David and Matt. And this week, we're going to court. We're going to the first quarter of baseball season superlatives court. Matt and David will make their arguments for best player, best starting pitcher, best relief pitcher, and so on and so forth. And I'll make the decision on who made the better argument. But before we get into all that, David, how you doing this week?
I'm doing all right. I had a bit of a worse week. Seems that as my out of podcast life goes, the Cubs season also goes because they've been down bad this week as well. So hopefully it all turns back right and we're going again good this week. So Matt, how you doing this week?
Doing pretty good. Had a pretty nice week. My team also had a really bad week last week. I think the Braves went 1-5 last week. But then my personal life wasn't the same way, so I hate to hear that you didn't have a great week, David. But I'm actually pretty excited. I'm going to be out next week. I'm going on a trip to Hawaii, so it'll be a lot of fun. And so y'all will be missing me next week. But yeah, everything's been good. Just watching a little bit of baseball, other sports. The basketball playoffs have been pretty fun. The hockey playoffs have been pretty fun. So, and watching my Braves every night. Been a lot of good stuff. But how are you doing, Damian?
Well, your guys' sports teams have been flailing. Both of mine have been doing really well. The Lakers are in the conference finals. Actually, the game's on right now as we're recording, so if I seem a little distracted, I'm sorry. And then the Dodgers have just continued to make the Padres pay for deciding to put a crying Clayton Kershaw on the video board, so you can't complain about that. But other than that, life's been pretty good this week, and I'm excited to go into this and see if you guys can make some arguments to convince me that your guys' players are the better of the two. So let's go ahead and jump over to – we'll go ahead and start with the best player so far this year. And we're leaving Shohei Ohtani out of this because I think you could just put him in his own category for pretty much anything, and he's going to win. But, David, who did you pick? And keep about 60 seconds on your argument for who your player is.
Yeah, so I jumped the gun on Matt. I wanted to do this, force Matt out of his comfort zone. I went with Ronald Acuna Jr. To go after as my best player of this first quarter. Acuna has put together an early MVP candidate season. He's got 9 home runs, but what's maybe more impressive is that he's running at 17 stolen bases already, which I believe does lead the major leagues. He's walking exactly as much as he strikes out, and he doesn't lead the major leagues, by the way. It's Esteury Ruiz, second in the majors. He's got a 436 weighted on base average, and a 436 on base percentage, meaning that this guy is getting on base 43% of the time, which is just disgusting for a guy who steals bases as much as this guy does. He's got 37 runs, which leads Major League Baseball. And on top of all that, right, he's getting a little bit unlucky per expected stats. His xWOBA is 460. There could be another gear in Ronald Acuna Jr., and to this point, he's leading the league in WAR, at least tied for it. My early MVP, my best player so far, has been Ronald Acuna Jr., who is the leader of the NL East leading Braves, the leadoff man. I just think he's got another gear in him even. But we're finally seeing that kind of MVP player that we saw a couple of years ago from Ronald Acuna.
Yeah, I don't like arguing against that, but my guy that I picked Wander Franco, and the reason I picked him is because this guy is similarly to Ronald Acuna Jr. was considered like a generational type talent as a prospect. His first 2 years in the big leagues have been good, but not like insanely good, and this year has been insanely good. He's got a 145 WRC plus. Has 12 stolen bases, 7 homers, hitting over 300 at 301, 354 on base, 521 slugging. He's been as advertised as at the plate. Like I said, the base running's been great. And really the big separator here for me is while Ronald Acuna's bat's been a little bit better, Wander Franco has been playing an elite defensive shortstop, whereas Ronald Acuna Jr.'s kind of struggled in right field. He's in the first percentile and outs above average, while Wander Franco's been really good at shortstop. So that kind of cancels out some of that extra value that Ronald Acuna Jr. has had with the bat. I don't like arguing against Ronald Acuna Jr., and I think we're picking both guys who are maybe front runners right now for MVP in each league, depending on how you view what Shohei's done so far this year is in the American League. But But yeah, Wander Franco with that defense and base running and plate, just he's done everything well. Whereas Ronald Acuna has done 4 tools well, but maybe not the fifth.
Yeah, both of you guys make intriguing arguments here. Both of these guys, they're tied on WAR. I think for top of the league at 2.2 WAR. Obviously Acuna is the ideal candidate for all of the rule changes this year. We're taking advantage of it at least. And Wander Franco is really kind of becoming that player that we have always expected him to be, and he's playing that high level, elite shortstop defense for the best team in the league right now. It's a tough decision between the two, but I think right now you probably have to give the edge just to Ronald Acuna. I think just the ability of what he's able to do with stealing the 17 bases so far, having the 175 WRC plus, even if he's struggling a little bit in right field, I think the impact offensively that he's bringing kind of outweighs the impact that Franco's giving to that, to the Rays defense. So I think, David, you win this one. Ronald Acuna Jr., I think, has been the best player so far.
Woo.
I'm not gonna argue with that.
Matt's fine.
Listen, you don't know how bad I wanted just to pick Wander Franco to just say that Ronald didn't win and Matt basically made him lose. But anyway, so let's go ahead and jump over to our best starting pitcher so far. So, David, who do you have for that?
All right, I guess I'll go first again, but I am going to go with the league leader in ERA thus far for the AL Central leading Minnesota Twins, and that is Sonny Gray, who is currently sitting at a 1.39 ERA so far, with a 1.89 FIP. He's just at 1.9 wins above replacement, which, I mean, starter wins above replacement is a little iffy, but Sonny Gray is showing the vintage curveball, slider, 5-6 pitch guy that he showed a few years back when he was with the Reds, where he was kind of looking like a Cy Young type of pitcher in 2019. He kind of lost his mojo there for a little bit after, leaving Oakland, but right now he's got an elite strikeout rate. He's got elite movement on his pitches. He has yet to allow a home run this season. And he's sitting on a really, really strong ERA. For the existing performance that we've seen from him this season, he's been every bit the ace that Minnesota has needed and was looking for when they traded for Pablo Lopez. So in my mind, that means that Sonny Gray, he may get some regression on that with that home run luck, but what we're looking at is this first quarter. And in this first quarter, no pitcher has allowed fewer runs than Sonny Gray.
Yeah, the guy I picked, it's going to be Zack Gallen, and Zack Gallen has been really, really good as well. He has he has a 2.35 ERA, but his peripherals are better than Sonny Gray's. He has a 179 FIP, a 255 xFIP compared to Sonny Gray's 312 xFIP, 189 FIP. But the big thing too is that Zack Gallen has pitched 12 more innings and he's made one more start, but that means he's pitching deeper into games as well. So Zack Gallen's a guy who's gone out there several times, thrown 6, 7, 8 innings, whereas Sonny Gray has been doing it in a little bit less amount of innings, and he's walking more guys. And Zack Gallen has had the batting average on balls in play has been pretty similar for both, but Zack Gallen has he's not putting a lot of guys on base with free passes. He hasn't had the same insane home run luck, but at the end of the day, when you throw a pitch, sometimes it's not necessarily the pitcher preventing the run. Sometimes the batter just doesn't hit very well. And not to mention the fact that Sonny Gray is pitching in the AL Central against awful competition, whereas Zack Gallen's pitching against the Padres, the Dodgers, and the Rockies, which sounds silly, but Coors Field. So, and I'm pretty sure Zack Gallen, one of his only real not great start was at Coors Field too. So I think the competition matters, and the fact that he's got more volume matters as well.
So backing up your take there, Matt, Zack Gallen in his starts against the Padres and the Dodgers, at least his first two, he gave it 5 and 4 there to them. He's shut down everyone else basically since then. Sonny Gray has had a fantastic, renaissance so far in Minnesota there. The one thing with Sonny Gray that kind of, you mentioned the, Gallen's going deeper into games. And the thing is Gallen's not walking batters as much as Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray's walk rate's 3.1 per nine, where Gallen is 1.26 per nine. You know, walking people less. The strikeout rate's kind of the same. Pitching in a tougher division, going deeper into games. I think this one is a Zack Gallen. I think I'm going to go towards Zack Gallen here. So we're 1-1 so far, and you guys make an argument. So it's getting pretty interesting on that point. But let's go ahead and jump over to our best relief pitcher so far, and we'll go ahead and start with Matt on this one.
Yeah, so my best relief pitcher so far is Yenier Cano. I'm not 100% sure if I'm saying that right, but his first name. But I know the last name is Cano, and he has been extremely good this year. He has yet to give up a run in 19 2/3 innings, or an earned run at least, and he has yet to walk a guy in 19 2/3 innings. And walks were his problem in the past. Last year between two teams, between Baltimore and I believe Minnesota, he had 8 walks per 9. That's been his struggle in the past. Well, this year, no walks in 19 innings, 0 ERA, and the peripheral is a 122 FIP, 171 xFIP. He's already put up 1.2 WAR, which would be pretty high up on the leaderboards for starting pitchers. This guy's insane. He's gone multiple innings several times. He's pitched in 15 games, 19 2/3 innings. He only has a few saves, but they also have Felix Bautista, who is kind of the incumbent closer. So, he's not going to get a ton of saves because of that. But, man, this guy's awesome. And it's been fun to watch him. I watched him a couple weeks ago against the Braves, and he is lights out, and it's been fun to watch.
For relief pitchers, it's a little bit tough because, relievers are very volatile, right? One bad outing can completely diminish your first quarter results. These guys have only thrown 15 to 20 innings really at this point in the season. So, a body of work in the first quarter, in my mind, for a reliever needs to encompass a ton of strikeouts and not very many runs given up, right? The best reliever to this point in terms of strikeouts in the league is Alexis Diaz. He is the brother of Edwin Diaz, and he has absolutely dominated thus far in this early portion of the season, right? And he's locked down 9 games for the Reds with a 17.40 K per 9, which translates to 29 strikeouts in 15 innings, which is absurd, right? It's a rate that is among the best strikeout rates in all of baseball. He's going to be really dominant every time he comes in. He also hasn't allowed a home run yet. And for relievers, home runs are kind of the worst thing you can possibly allow, right? It's automatically giving up a run. This is continuing a dominant stretch last season that Alexis Diaz showed, and it's showing that his bloodline is just like his brother's right now. Yenier Cano is not closing down those games in Baltimore, right? He might not even be the best reliever on his own team with Felix Bautista there locking down games and also striking out guys at a clip of almost 2 per inning. So, I where I'm at is I want strikeouts, I want whiffs. Alexis Diaz sitting on a ton of strikeouts, a ton of whiffs. He's not giving up hard contact. He's got no home runs allowed. I'm sitting on Alexis Diaz, and I'm excited about it. And I think he's, making a case for being, one of the best relievers in the NL Central, if not the majors.
Did we lose him?
We can't hear you.
No, you. I don't know. Matt.
I made my argument already.
Yeah.
Oh, we did.
It's you,
It's
Chief.
your turn.
Oh, like I said, if I was distracted, sorry. It's hard to go wrong with either one of these guys. It comes down to, do you want the dominant closer or do you want the dominant setup guy who basically came out of nowhere this year? We've seen it with Diaz before. Cano basically came out of nowhere. His problem in his career has been walks. Hasn't walked a batter. You mentioned Diaz hasn't given up a homer. Cano hasn't given up a run altogether this year. Not striking out quite as much, but pitching a few more innings, probably because he is the setup guy rather than the closer for a team that's actually competitive there in Baltimore over Cincinnati. I think this one's got to go towards Cano. Just not having given up a run so far and basically coming out of nowhere. And he was a piece that they got back while they were trading their closer last year. I think it's a really good feel-good story here, and Cano not having given up a run altogether or walked anybody as well, while also having 10 strikeouts per nine. I think that kind of gives him a little bit of the edge there.
One more note on Cano. He has a 74% ground ball rate.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
it's pretty good. So, Matt, you won that one, so you're up 2-1 so far. Not that it's really a competition, but maybe Matt
It
will
is
make a better
now.
lawyer so far than David. But he made such a good argument, I didn't even remember he made it. So let's go ahead and go over to Rookie of the Year. So, David, who do you got for Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I'm going with James Outman of the Dodgers, and this is a guy who has come onto the scene with a bit of a high strikeout rate, right? He's got some negatives. He's got some things he definitely needs to work on. But what's made James Outman so good is that he's been able to play all three outfield positions for the Dodgers. He's been able to, fill in the gap that Cody Bellinger left in center field for the Dodgers last season. And then he's also put together a slash line of 265, 359, 544 for what a 900 OPS, a 145 WRC plus, 1.5 wins above replacement. He's playing great defense. He's walking a lot. He's got a 10% walk rate. This is a plate approach that I think can be sustainable. He's got a lot of whiffs right now, but being able to anchor this Dodgers lineup has been really, really helpful for the Dodgers to where, we before the season thought the Dodgers maybe were on the downtrend, but because of James Outman's breakout early in the season so far, I think this is a big, big part of why the Dodgers are leading the NL West right now. And to me, that's what makes James Outman the best rookie this season, because the other rookies that we've talked about, like our favorite for the Rookie of the Year, Corbin Carroll, he's made a good impact on his team, right? But they're still behind the Dodgers. James Outman's been able to keep the Dodgers up in first in the NL West at this point in the season.
Yeah, so I went with Corbin Carroll, and the reason that I went with Corbin Carroll is because I think when you look at a lot of the underlying metrics, he's actually been better. I think James Outman's been awesome, and it's been a lot of fun to see a guy who has, who kind of came out of nowhere to a certain extent. I know a lot of Dodgers fans liked him, but around baseball, he was not a super high rated prospect and stuff. But James Outman is whiffing a ton, 33% strikeout rate in and really a 368 batting average on balls in play too. His expected slugging is like 423. His expected batting average 229. But Corbin Carroll has been as advertised, and that's kind of one of the things with him is he's kind of come. He's got a huge pedigree. He's come up. He's surpassed expectations for his rookie year. He's cut his strikeout rate into the major leagues this year. His walk rate's really good. He's stealing tons of bases, 10 stolen bases on the season, 124 WRC plus. He's getting on base. He's running on base, and he's playing a decent defense. He's still got some work to do. Defensive metrics are kind of fuzzy though, because last year he was insanely good defensively in 32 games. So it's early on those defensive metrics, but he's been as advertised, and I really like what I've seen from him. His expected numbers are great, and I think he's going to end up being the best of the rookie class this year long term. So I'm going to pick him as my rookie of the month. He's having to carry that team to a certain level. I mean, there's other good players there, but like he's kind of the guy, whereas James Outman's just kind of another guy for the Dodgers, where they have Betts and Freeman and Muncy and all these guys. So
I'm
I
about to
like
pick my
Corbin Carroll.
second Diamondbacks player of the week in a row, but go on.
Did
Just
Matt pick
saying,
a
I
Diamondback as
literally
well?
am.
You guys, Matt picked a Diamondback last week as well, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah. There's
Um,
been 3 Diamondback player of the weeks in the last 2 weeks, but okay.
but when we're looking at it all together, um, Outman has more homers, he has more runs, he has more RBIs, doesn't have as many steals, he is striking out more, but they have relatively close to the same on base percentages. Carroll has a little bit higher of average. Outman is slugging a little bit more, even if his expected numbers are a little bit lower. It's translating right now. He has the higher WRC plus, and even if it is a small sample size, he has the better defensive metrics so far, and he's been worth 1.5 WAR, where Carroll's only been close to 1. so far this year. I think at the end of the year, if we're looking at it, it might be a different story. But so far, as of right now, I think the best rookie off all those stats and the arguments, I think it's James Outman. So I guess
It's
what are we 2-2 now?
Yeah, it's 2-2. And it's good to remember that expected stats are useful for determining whether the results a player has gotten are kind of warranted and may continue going
Yeah,
forward. But the results are the results, right? Like he's done very well, and it's not like the expected stats can't really take away from what he has done. It's just saying maybe he won't be as good going forward, which I think is fair, right? I mean,
yeah,
but this is the first quarter, and that's what he did in the first quarter.
yeah. I think it's incredibly fair. I mean, this is where the Homer bias part's going to come in. I expect that to tail off a little bit
Yeah,
with Outman, but so far I think the level that he's played up to has been more impressive than what we would have
It,
expected.
it reminds me if it reminds me a lot of Jock Peterson's first season with the
yeah.
Dodgers, where he was like insanely good, hitting a lot of home runs, having and then like the second half of that season he was not good. I don't think Outman will end up being like the second half of the Jock Peterson rookie year,
Yeah.
but like I think it's kind of a similar situation there.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that Outman doesn't have is that he doesn't get to hit the Cubs pitching again. So,
Yeah.
that might hurt him going forward. He killed the Cubs, man. He was so good.
He still gets to go to Coors. They haven't
There you
made a
go.
trip there yet, so let's go ahead, and I think that's all the players that we've had so far. So let's go ahead and go to the teams aspect of it. And Matt, who do you have for your most surprising team so far?
So my most surprising team, and it's kind of I was kind of struggling with it, but I picked them anyways. Man, it's the Rays. I think we all expected the Rays would be at least a decent team this year. Like we thought they'd be, they'd be fine, but like we didn't expect this. They're 31-11. They lead the majors in WAR with position players by 6 WAR, and their pitching has been, even though they've been injury ravaged, their pitching has been extremely good too. Like their pitching is eighth in the majors in WAR, even though they've had like 3 of their starting rotation members out for pretty much the whole year. I mean, Glass now hasn't pitched. Springs got hurt early. Rasmussen's missed a lot. Eflin's missed a lot. Like, and they've still been a top 10 pitching staff while having like an insanely good offense, and they're playing in the toughest division in baseball. Although their first couple weeks schedule was pretty weak, like they're playing in the toughest division in baseball. They're 31-11. They have a monster lead in that division right now. Like I don't think anybody could have expected that the Tampa Bay Rays would be this good. They have a 120 run differential. Like that is just absolutely insane. And I think that a lot of the other surprise teams like the Orioles, the Diamondbacks, some of these teams, like we thought there was a world where they could be what they are, but I don't think there was a world where we thought the Rays would be 31-11 and just this freaking good, especially offensively. Like they're just insane.
Yep, the Rays have been much better than I think anybody anticipated, but for as dominant as the Rays have been, they were still picked to be third in the AL East, and the Orioles were picked to be fourth in the AL East, and they are the only team in the AL East that's maintaining ground with the Tampa Bay Rays to this point. They're 26-15, which would put them as the number 2 team in the American League, which is absolutely insane. But this is a team led by Adley Rutschman, getting rock solid performance from him, getting electric elite performance from Cedric Mullins, getting really really good starts from guys like Tyler Wells, who are just coming out of absolutely nowhere to perform well, and then same for Yennier Cano, who we've already talked about. To me, the Rays' success is not impossible, right? It wasn't crazy because the Rays have been to a World Series in the last 3 years. I mean, this is a good team. We knew it was a good team. We just didn't know how good it would be, and there's some injury issues and whatnot. We don't pick them to make the playoffs. We didn't pick the Orioles to make the playoffs either. And right now, they're the number 1 and number 2 teams in the American League. So to me, it's more surprising that Baltimore has been able to do this without the pitching to this point. I mean, they haven't had it. Grayson Rodriguez got absolutely shelled yesterday, right? And he was supposed to be one of those guys who could come up and maybe anchor that rotation. He hasn't been that yet. And I feel like the Orioles are have another gear, right? I mean, as we get towards the trade deadline, the Orioles, the Rays, they're going to get better. But the Orioles are the type of team that has the farm system that can absolutely go crazy. I love where the Orioles have put themselves to this point, and to be the second best team in the American League, which is kind of objectively the better division at this point. They're the better league at this point in the season. I mean, they have, and they're also number two in the AL East, which is five teams above 500 right now. I'm thrilled with the Orioles' start to this point, and I'm easily making my case for them to be the most surprising team of the season so far.
Yeah, out of the two, I mean, we always talk about never doubt the Rays, and we doubted them a little bit coming into the year, and they've proved us wrong all the way around. We came into the year also saying, or even at the end of the trade deadline last year, we thought the Orioles were selling off, and that we didn't like that, and then they didn't make any of the big moves this offseason that we thought they should have made, and we were like, well, they're just going to stick into this thing where they're going to get through this year and then maybe make the next move and wait for the guys to keep developing. And then you look at them sitting here in the second in the American League, and a guy like Gunnar Henderson has provided them .2 WAR so far. He's batting 180, a 95 WRC plus, and they're able to do it with him, who was supposed to be one of their big key contributors this year. And then even on their pitching side, you mentioned Yennier Cano, we've mentioned Felix Bautista. Like, their most valuable starter has been Kyle Gibson. I mean, Tyler Wells is not far behind, but like outside of those two, I mean, the pitching staff that they've been working with, it's really no namers, even compared to what Tampa has been able to do with, Shane McClanahan, Springs before he went down, Rasmussen before he went down, Eflin, now that he's come back, has been really good. And we know they're hitters. I mean, we've mentioned Wander. Yandy Diaz has been a baseball savant, god for a couple years, and he's turned it up even more this year. I think the most surprising team so far, I think it's the Baltimore Orioles, just because of the fact that if you said even at the first quarter mark they were going to be the second best team in the American League, I think people would say, okay, you're smoking something. But if you said the Tampa Bay Rays were going to be the best team in baseball, I don't think anyone would act all that surprised at the end of the day. Now, by how much they were the best team in baseball, by run differential wise, that might be surprising. But even then, it's only by 4 games over the Baltimore Orioles. And I think at the end of the day, if you would have said even then, they're the best team by 4 games over the Orioles, people would be like, oh, the Orioles are only 4 games back. So I think it's them at the end of the day. So I think, David, you win this one. So I think, what is it, 3-2 right now?
Yeah, I got one in the bank because I know where the next one's going.
All right. So, Matt, what is your most disappointing team so far?
So my most disappointing team, and I mean, first off, I got to pick second on every single one of these. So the fact that it's only 3-2 is not that big. I'm honestly proud of myself for making it that close. But because the team that David picked, I would have, that's the team I would have picked. But
so you're saying we need to advocate for a snake draft next time.
We needed a snake draft. But,
I intentionally took the people that were not like leading in WAR. Like I was actively going out to get some interesting people to talk about.
Yeah, and then you take the most disappointing team in the last long time is. But anyways,
he's not even gonna pick this team. Come on, you got the right.
Okay. I got I might have the bias.
Objection. Wait, I'm the judge. How can I object?
Okay. So the disappointing team for me has been the San Diego Padres. They went out and they spent a ton of money on actual upgrades, unlike just kind of rebuilt, bringing back the same roster they had with a 1-for-1 swap. But they went out, they got a bunch of upgrades, and to be honest, the upgrades they've made over since last trade deadline have actually not been that bad. Like, their 2 best players have been the upgrades they've gotten in the last, half season. Xander Bogaerts been good, and Juan Soto's been good. But this team's been disappointing. They're 20-22 so far this year, which is not great. I believe they're at least in third place. I think they're still in third place with the Giants are really kind of breathing down their necks now, but for third place. But they've just been disappointing. Everyone was picking them to win the World Series this year, and they've been really rough. The pitching has not done well. Yu Darvish has been fine. Michael Wacha has actually been pretty good. But, man, some of their rotation guys that they were counting on, Musgrove's been hurt most of the year, and since he's come back, he has not been great. has a 6.63 ERA in his first 4 starts, and Blake Snell has been horrible this year. 4.61 ERA, a 5.26 FIP, and he's walking 14% walk rate, which like if you were looking at hitters, like you would consider that like an elite hitting walk rate for a batter, and he's just letting everybody have that. So like this team, their bullpen's been kind of a mess. Juan Soto's finally gotten going, but like Manny Machado he's not played well. He's not been good at the plate, and he's like, if you look at some of his expected numbers, his StatCast numbers, they have not been good. He has really looked rough this year so far, and like their depth just isn't there. Like Trent Grisham's been bad again. Cronenworth's been pretty rough. Like, I mean, you look at the guys they brought in, like Nelson Cruz, Matt Carpenter, have both been really bad. Like this team's not got a lot of depth. The rotation's kind of shaky, and outside of Bogart, Soto, and Tatis, who finally came back and is playing pretty well, like they just haven't been great. So this a team that everyone was picking to win the World Series, being pretty meh, being below 500. Like, being in third place at this stage of the season, it's pretty disappointing. So I went with the Padres.
Let's grab some numbers. All right. So for the Padres from Spotrac, they have the third highest MLB payroll this season with a $245 million payroll. What if I told you there was a team that spent $100 million more to have the exact same record through 42 games in the season? And that, my friends, is the New York Mets. And they have done it without having disappointing performances on their offense. Now they have a couple of guys who are disappointing or performing kind of disappointing, but Brandon Nimmo, who they spent a ton of money on, has a 142 WRC plus. He's been very, very good. Francisco Lindor has kind of gone back to having that kind of bad luck where he was just a little bit above league average a couple years ago, before last season's kind of resurgent season. But he's playing good defense. He's being a very valuable player for the team. And Pete Alonso is number 2 right now in baseball in home runs, right? But this is a team that has World Series aspirations. They're spending $87 million on 2 pitchers in their rotation, and those pitchers have thus far pitched, I think, 6 games. So you're looking at what seems to be the same level of disappointment, where the Mets absolutely have World Series aspirations. They have an owner who is wanting to spend money to get to the World Series, and they are a team that is completely unable to get to first in their division and is going to have to be fighting for a wild card all the way through this season. This is the worst possible start for a team that's spending $345 million on their roster and getting absolutely no good performances from their pitching staff. I just can't. There's just no one else, because no one else is spending this much money. Like the New York Yankees are the number 2 payroll, and thus far, I mean, you could have picked the New York Yankees for this, but for me, the gap between the Mets, the Yankees, and the Padres is just so vast, right? I mean, $100 million, that's more than 8 teams' payrolls this season. So, and that's how much more the Mets are spending than the Padres. So for me, it's the Mets. It's easy, and I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel because Scherzer's been hurt. Verlander just got back and had a clunker in amongst a good start. And they haven't had any other pitcher step up, right? Everybody else has been bad. So I am very, very worried about the Mets going forward.
Yeah, this one it's an interesting topic because, like David said, the amount of money that the Mets have spent for the same record of what the Padres have spent, who are also one of the big spenders of the offseason, and figure to be coming forward or going forward as well. I feel like the most disappointing out of the two so far have been the Mets. And that's just, I guess you could say, because we told them the injuries were going to happen. Like everyone laughed, like, okay, you're going super risky here. We understand it's Scherzer and it's Verlander, but at the end of the day, they're 40 plus year olds who had injury histories in the past, and you're guaranteeing all this money to them. And even Jose Quintana, who is also out and injured as well, who hasn't even pitched one game for them. And you didn't get any depth to back that up. Whereas in the Padres, I feel like their bad luck has been, or their disappointing has been Machado not really stepping it up to be the player that he was last year. I feel like all the other guys that they've kind of brought in have not been terrible. Like Soto's been turning it around recently, and before they put the stupid crying Kershaw thing on the scoreboard, like they've lost 7 of 9 since doing that. They and 5 of those losses are against the Dodgers. Like I feel like it's totally different if they hadn't just faced the 5 of the 9 there, and this record was, not having faced the team who has been their kryptonite in the regular season. I mean, the Dodgers have owned the Padres in the regular season, and the Padres obviously knocked them out in the playoffs last year. There was high expectations for a team that was to win the World Series or whatever. But I feel like the Mets are a team that we said should be better. They are going to go all or out, or all or nothing, and it's really showed up nothing so far. So I think that the Mets are actually the more disappointing team than the Padres so far.
Woo!
Hey, just to chime in real quick, I don't know if y'all have looked at Manny Machado's Baseball Savant page, but it is
A lot of blue.
A lot of blue.
Lots of blue.
Well, Arenado's was a lot of blue 2 weeks ago, and all it took was one hot streak, and now it's not. So I trust. I refuse to believe that one bad month equals player bad now. In these, so yeah, Manny Machado's on a Hall of Fame trajectory rather easily at this point. I don't think now that he's age 32, he's bad. He'll be all right.
Anything else?
I was just gonna say the thing about Manny Machado is that there were some signs last year that he was not. I mean, he had a great year last year. Don't get me wrong, but there were some signs that there were some red flags starting to show up a little bit, especially late. Like his chase rates went way up and stuff. He started striking out more, and then this year, like his quality of contact has been really bad too, to go along with it. But it's not, we're not doing a Manny Machado episode, so.
So let's go ahead and jump over to the miscellaneous version or miscellaneous things. I don't want to go up to we'll hit injuries at the end if we have the time for it, but a couple interesting things in the miscellaneous part. Yuri Perez was he was top 10 prospect in baseball,
yes.
if I'm not mistaken. Yep. He's 20 years old for the Marlins. Everyone was expecting that he was going to be up probably next year or the year after. And where was he? Was he in Double-A at the time?
Yeah, he was Double-A.
We called him up from Double-A on Wednesday of last week to start on Thursday. Out of nowhere, pretty much. He had a pretty good start to the Double-A season so far, only having a 2.32 ERA, but got called straight up to the majors and made his debut on Thursday. 4 2/3 innings, gave up a couple runs. Showed all the flashes in the world, but what were your guys' thoughts about Yuri Perez getting called up out of nowhere and coming in?
Yeah, I absolutely love Yuri Perez. I think he's the best out of all the prospects that the Marlins have had pitching wise in the last few years. I mean, this guy, for somebody who's 6'8", has such good control of his body, and he throws lots of strikes, and at least he has in the minor leagues. And I think he's going to be really, really good. I was surprised they called him up as early as they did. He's only 20 years old, and but he looks like he's going to be the real deal. And if you add him to Sandy and Luzardo, like, my God, that top three is nasty if he hits like we think he might.
Yeah, I love Yuri Perez. I think he's the type of starting pitcher that can, transform a team. He can have that ace ceiling, but it's early, and he gave up some runs in this last start. I think he's definitely going to give up more runs. I think he's going to go through his rookie struggles, but he was nasty, man. He has a wipeout slider that has just so much movement to it. That's a guy he can touch triple digits. He's gross.
I was going to say, he's like if you took Yunior Cano, who we were talking about earlier, and you made him a starter, and he was able to do that for like the whole game. Like, that's the type of stuff he has. I'm not saying he'll be able to repeat that, but with the walks and stuff, but like, that's the type of potential we have here.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's a big time deal, and it's good to see those prospects get called up early and be able to have a shot at a decent season in the major leagues at least. So one of the other things we had happen this week was Zack Grienke, which I never even knew this was a thing really until it happened. The 5th pitcher ever in Major League Baseball history to strike out 1,000 different batters. And if you're asking who the other four are, they happen to go by the name of Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson, Greg Maddux, and Roger Clemens. So, just some scrubs to be thrown in with.
That is some incredible company. I mean, that's just another feather in Zack Greinke's cap. I mean, we'd like to talk about the Hall of Fame a good bit. I would say Zack Greinke's maybe one of the more easy locks to get into the Hall of Fame because he's the type of guy who's never, bothered anybody. I don't think there's anybody who watches baseball who doesn't like Zack Greinke to some extent, and has knows who he is and has enjoyed watching him pitch before. And it's only it's literally going to be in my mind the minimum weight for him. He's got to be first ballot just because of all he's done for both Kansas City, the Dodgers, and all these teams that he's played on. This is a guy who deserves all the accolades, and it's cool to see him get that kind of recognition.
Yeah, I agree. That record is really, really impressive because it not only does it mean I mean, for one thing, most major league pitchers don't get to 1,000 strikeouts against anybody. And the fact that he is able to get to 2,000 or 1,000 different hitters is awesome. It shows longevity. There had to be a lot of different guys, a lot of time periods between him starting in 2004 and still pitching at age 39 in 2023. And the fact is, like, I know interleague play probably helped with that, but because a lot of the really old time pitchers didn't have that advantage of the second half of the league. But that's just such an incredible record for Zack Greinke. Like, just pitch for different teams. He's always been so good. As David said, definite first ballot Hall of Famer, and to be mentioned with those guys, I mean, is incredible. So good for Zack Greinke. I don't know if there's. I mean, he theoretically, I think, could get to. Yeah, he's got a chance at getting to 3,000 strikeouts. He's got to get 86 more to get to 3,000. So we'll see if he's able to do that this year. It's gonna be tough. He's not striking out a lot of guys these days, but maybe he can get there. So we'll see. But Zack Greinke is awesome, and he's also the type of guy who, if he's like one short, he doesn't care. Like, it's Zack
Yeah.
Greinke. Everyone loves
Dude,
him.
yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the interview of like when after that game when he didn't even realize like what was happening. Like, it happened, I think it was like the last out of the inning, and he like walked back to the dugout and was just like going through his thing, and everyone kept coming up saying like congratulations, and he's like, for what? Like, what happened? And they're like, you struck out like 1,000 different batters in your career. He's like, that's a thing. Like, he didn't even know like it was even a
Yeah.
thing. And even to say, like, we've talked about obviously his longevity here, but if you look at his career strikeout rate, it's like 8 strikeouts per 9. It's not like he has a a ton of strikeouts. Like, he's one of these guys averaging 10 or 12 strikeouts per 9. Like, he's just a good pitcher overall, and to be able to still strike out 1,000 different batters in company with those guys outside of probably Greg Maddux, who you don't know for being the high velocity type guy, and more of just the command location type. Like, you don't really think of like that for a guy like Zack Greinke. So it's an incredibly interesting stat that even I didn't even really know of until it happened there. So very very interesting for Greinke, and I think he absolutely makes the Hall of Fame as well. But probably the most interesting topic that we'll probably have on the show this week is that we talked about the blackouts last week and what Major League Baseball needs to do to help spread the game. Well, the Cleveland Guardians announced this week that they have made a deal with Fubo TV to be the primary streaming service of the Cleveland Guardians. So I think this is a thing we're definitely going to see Major League Baseball and teams heading this way as well. You'll have their cable deal, and then you're going to have a streaming service that's going to pay to have the exclusive rights to that team as well. Obviously you'll still be able to get it through like Major League Baseball or whatever, but I mean, what do you guys think of it? I think it's incredibly interesting. I don't know, it really helps the blackout type deal thing about it, but if more people are going towards streaming, I mean, it's another way to help your service get more customers, I guess.
It's a step in the right direction, right? Like we need more options. Fubo is actually my TV provider because that's the only way I can get Marquee. They're the only ones who carry it in our area that have like an online streaming service that can stream the cable. So, it's one of those things where this is the right step, right? This is the way teams need to go. They need to provide their options to providers directly so that we can kind of circumnavigate the streaming service blackout stuff.
Yeah, and I'm with you on to a certain extent. I think that as long as it's an additional option to, I think it's great. The only thing that worries me is that these major league teams start signing with different streaming services and making them exclusives on there, where someone might need YouTube TV for certain, for general programming and stuff. Then the Braves are exclusive to Fubo, and it's like, well, I don't want to pay for two different ones, and it's that kind of thing that I think can get worrisome for me because there's a lot of different options out there, and it's frustrating when one's got deals with certain channels and another has deals with certain channels, and by the time you end up paying for all these different streaming services, you end up spending more money than you would spend on just getting a satellite dish or getting cable or something. So, but if they're kind of all, if they kind of sign with all the different ones, then and have more options, then I think that's the best case scenario is there's just more options out there. So, I guess it'll be interesting to see which direction this goes and what other teams might deal with this. I think that Cleveland maybe was one of the ones hit hardest by the Bally Sport thing, if I'm not mistaken. So that might be part of why they did this right now. I know
Yeah.
I think the Reds were hit really hard by it too. But some other markets have better TV ratings who haven't been hit quite as hard by that yet. But I think the Guardians have been hit pretty hard by that. So
Yeah, and it says I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. It says that the Guardians were the second team to be on Fubo, so I'm not sure who the maybe it was the Cubs actually. Now that David was saying that, maybe it is the Cubs. So I mean, it's an interesting way. We'll see what it looks like moving forward for that. But um, I guess real quick, we'll just hit on the little injury news. You heard us talk about Drew Rasmussen. He has a flexor strain. Sounds like it's going to be a long-term injury. Not sure that he's going to need Tommy John. I think that's going to be avoided at the moment. But he was put on the 60-day IL, so another hit to that Tampa Bay Rays rotation.
I hate it, dude. He was having a really good start to the season. I have him as my player of the week at one point? I want to say I did. Um, because he just has gone crazy early in the season there. I mean, it still to this point, and he's going to start missing starts right now, but he was 14th in WAR with 1.4, tied with guys like Eduardo Rodriguez, Justin Steele, Clayton Kershaw. So, he was off to a really, really strong start. I would say Tampa Bay is going to miss him, but they're about to get Tyler Glass now back. Like I think that they'll be all right, but it's a shame for Drew Rasmussen. He was right about to establish himself as one of the better pitchers in the league.
yeah, I mean Tampa Bay is going to miss him because they might get Glass now back, but they're also still missing Springs. And I mean Glass now is kind of Glass is kind of part of his name, and it's also describes him a little bit. So and then you've got like Shane Baz has been out, and Eflin's been banged up at times this year. Like they've had a pretty big rash of pitching injuries so far, and Rasmussen going out doesn't help them at all. But as long as their offense continues to perform while like they have, and they don't lose, and Rasmussen comes back eventually, I think they'll be all right. But it definitely a bummer for them to have so many injuries. And I mean that division is still there's enough good teams there. Like I mean, even though they've had this insane start and they've been so good, like they could still. I mean, there's enough good teams there. Someone could definitely is within range of catching them. It's not like they're doing this in the Central where like there's just pretty much zero chance anybody catches that record. Like they're still one of those other teams is going to get hot at some point, and it could be. I mean, the Orioles are like you mentioned earlier. They're only like 4 games behind them right now. But I mean, the Yankees or the Blue Jays could get hot too, and maybe even the Red Sox. You never know. But those teams are all really good, so it does hurt them a lot. But we'll see. Hopefully, he's able to come back strong from it.
Yeah, the other one was David. You might know more about this, but CJ Crone got put on the IL as well. Do you know more about that one?
Yeah, he has chronic back spasms at this point. So, another guy who's is kind of similar to Anthony Rizzo, where it's gonna just bother him all the time. And what I saw is that they're gonna. It's not really that impactful overall to Major League Baseball, but at least for Rockies fans, right? CJ Cron's been probably one of their best players the last three or so years, and top three players on teams seem like the type to cover. So, back spasms for Crone, and hopefully he gets better soon. He wasn't actually off to a very good start. He had a good first couple of weeks, but he's
Yeah,
been down. I think it's directly related to the back spasms.
yeah, he's been really bad, and I mean last year he wasn't very good either. So it's, I mean it's Coors Field, and but I mean I hate to see him get hurt. So but man, I bet the Rockies are they operate in such a weird way. I bet they're kicking themselves for not trading him when they could have in 2021. They could have gotten a lot for him at the deadline, but then they instead signed him to an extension, and he has not been very good. And now he's got a chronic injury, although he's a free agent at the end of this year. But sucks to see. I hope he comes back strong and is able to fight through the back spasms. It's not a fun injury for baseball players.
Yeah, and it's a lot harder to recover from things in Colorado as well. So,
Yep.
um, we don't need to talk about the other one. No, we can talk about that one later. But let's go ahead and jump over to players of the week so far. So, David, who do you have for your player this week?
Yeah, I've got Dominic Fletcher, who you might not know who that is. Listener at home, Dominic Fletcher is an outfielder for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And over the last week, he has 11 RBIs. He's kind of taken up the mantle for Lourdes Gurriel, who's my player of the week last week. I just thought it would be fun to take another Diamondbacks outfielder because they keep performing really well. Dominic Fletcher's hit 417 last week. He has 833 slugging, hit 2 home runs. And with the Diamondbacks winning games and they're maintaining a very strong hold on second in the division and the number one wild card slot in the National League, it feels appropriate to continue to provide my player of the week to a Diamondbacks player, and it's good to get Dominic Fletcher some love. This was a guy who I think he's 26 now. He's a little bit older. He wasn't much of a prospect, but a high contact guy that can play center field, and he doesn't going to walk a lot. He's not going to be this type of superstar player, but I mean, this season he's been very, very good for the Diamondbacks in this kind of spot role as their fourth outfielder. And he was the type of guy when before the Cubs signed Cody Bellinger, I wanted them to trade for Dominic Fletcher. I'm really excited that he's having some success at the major league level, and the Diamondbacks have a plethora of really good outfielders right now, so they're kind of drowning in riches. But it's cool to see that another guy is having some good success over there in Arizona.
Yep, Team Italy legend Dominic Fletcher, also brother of David Fletcher from the
Yeah, he is.
Angels.
Yeah, David Fletcher's brother.
Yep.
It's an
Um,
interesting.
was that?
Is that it's an interesting connection?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But the guy I went with for my player of the week was Nolan Arenado, who had been horrible until last week, in which he has been insane. So last week he had hit 4 home runs until tonight, where he had hit his fifth tonight of the week. He has hit 440 with a 444 on base. He only walked like once or twice. And then he slugged 1,000. And he's continued to play his typical defense. Nolan Arenado even stole a base this week, which is unusual for him. He's not very fast, so good for him. And great week for him. He needed it. He'd been really scuffling, and his season stat line is now back above league average, which is pretty crazy compared to where he was, like a week or two ago. And compare that, pair that up with his defense, and you're looking at a guy who is once again really, really, really good. So, it's good to see him get back on this normal trajectory, and we'll see if he's able to keep it up going forward. There were some things in his Statcast data that were really red flags, and I mean he hasn't totally flipped those around, but it definitely has been an encouraging sign this week.
Yeah, I think we all knew that at some point Arenado would turn it around. Like he wasn't going to go from being a MVP finalist last year to be an under league average as a hitter. So it's good to see that he's finally turning it around. There was kind of signs that maybe he was dealing with an injury, but this looks like a good sign that maybe he wasn't after all, or that has subsided enough.
It's
But the
funny.
guy.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
I,
go ahead.
I was gonna say it's funny if you click on 2021, the balls don't move at all for 2023. They're very very similar. So he's at least back to what he was at that point.
Yeah.
Thus far, yeah.
And we know it's he was going to be good. The guy that I went with, though, is Michael Conforto from the Giants. He also hit 4 homers this week, batted .364, 462 on base, a 268 WRC plus, half or 0.6 WAR. Jesus, a guy who he only has a 235 BABIP this week, but he's a guy who's coming off that major shoulder injury, missed all of last season, was supposed to sign, in the offseason, then right after the deadline, and just never came around after that shoulder injury, getting ready for the 2022 season. Came back, signed with the Giants this year, has really scuffled to start the year. He's shown the power here and there, but just not consistently. And then to be able to come out and hit 4 homers this week and bat .364, I hope that it's a sign of the old Michael Conforto coming back, because he's one of my favorite players to watch. I think his swing is so nice and pure when it's right, and it just hasn't been right for so long. So hopefully the hitting 4 homers this week is a sign that maybe Conforto's finding it again.
Yeah, I definitely hope. I definitely hope so. I actually kind of liked that signing for them. So
it's a very good signing that I hope they trade him, so then I can really like him again. But anything else you guys want to wrap up on here before we close the show out?
I'll just say, we're a quarter of the way through the season. It's been a really fun season. I watched a YouTube video today. It was, I think it was Baseball Doesn't Exist video about just the season so far. And man, there's been a lot that's happened, and just kind of summarizing everything. And, we were talking before the show about kind of our favorite moments, and, I don't think people aren't remembering too much about like opening day, and when, the Aaron Judge hit a home run on his first at bat, after signing the extension. Like, that's stuff people have completely forgotten about. I mean, some of the performances we've seen so far, like, it's been a really, really fun season so far. And, quarter of the way through, hard to believe. And, it's going to keep going into the dog days here soon. And, lots of good baseball yet to be played.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a very fun season to this point. My note was going to be the Marlins improved to 13-1 in 1-run games tonight with a walk-off home run by Jorge Soler. So that's incredible, and all like half of those are against the Cubs. So Marlins are, they're playing that I think a couple years ago the Rangers it was either the Rangers or the Mariners that had a really ridiculous record in 1-run games and made the playoffs. Marlins are kind of doing that right now, so we'll see if they keep it up.
Yeah, I think the Orioles did at one point too, if I'm not mistaken. Had a really good stretch of 1-run games there for a couple of years. But
yeah, that's how you do it, man. That's how you got to fluke your way in, even if your offense isn't ready yet. They've got some good players, but the pitching staff's what's going to have to carry them, and that's you never know.
Yeah, it's weird. Sometimes those years, some teams just find all the luck in those games. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in to episode 126 of the Bat Flip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys back next week.